Let's bring in David Gregory, moderator of Meet the Press and MSNBC political analyst, The Washington Post's Eugene Robinson. A lot to unpack here. David, first to you. This president wanting to turn the page, get past the, quote, recovery summer that wasn't a recovery summer. It's post-Labor Day, launch the campaign. But his first answer was at least 15 minutes. And, you know, where was the energy and the passion until the end of that news conference, as Chuck was pointing out?
I thought he had a little bit more rough and tumble in terms of framing the argument when it came to the economy. And there's a lot to unpack there in terms of whether he's negotiating and what he's going to do on taxes. But I think he's trying to frame this as a national message, which is essentially about you know, we've done some things that are getting you in the right direction, and it's the Republicans who are unreasonable. I keep pointing out there's 60% of independent voters who disapprove of this president. These are folks who have a problem with taxes and spending and the deficit, but they've also got a problem with how Washington isn't working very well right now. To the extent that he can cast Republicans as being totally unreasonable, he's better off. And on the tax issue, you know, these corporate tax breaks, I've talked to business leaders this week who are very supportive of the president on this. They say this is late, where was this before? But this is exactly what they want to see. So and I think it may be an interesting kind of piece to all of this with the broader debate about individual tax cuts.
Putting the Republicans on the spot because their own supporters, their constituency, want these breaks. I mean, the 100% depreciation, you know, those kind of write-offs, Gene. It seems to me that there was a little bit of Harry Truman in the strategy, the do-nothing Congress, you know, stalemated for a month on something that everyone should be able to agree on.
Exactly. I thought that was the strongest part of the economic portion of the news conference, when he did put the Republicans on the spot and say, look, this is the stuff that your constituents want. This is stuff that Republicans always support, and yet it's being delayed for, you know, it's being stalled for partisan reasons. I thought that was effective, and overall it was kind of the White House almost, frankly, professorial version of the message he's been giving out on the hustings in a more animated way over the past week.
David, on the whole question of this minor clergyman, quote-unquote, mail-order degree or something or other from this cult-like church. Have I put my own, you know, context around this right now? But this conflagration and the way it's being perceived overseas is serious. We've already had loss of life over this. The president being asked today, let's watch, about whether they bear some responsibility for General Petraeus and others speaking out on it. And, of course, Bob Gates calling the pastor.
You know, my hope is that this individual preys on it and refrains from doing it. Although this may be one individual in Florida, part of my concern is to make sure that we don't start having a whole bunch of folks all across the country think this is the way to get attention. This is a way of endangering our troops, our sons and daughters, fathers and mothers, husbands and wives who are sacrificing for us to keep us safe. And you don't play games with that. You know, I hardly think we're the ones who elevated this story, but it is, in the age of the internet, something that can cause us profound damage around the world, and so we've got to take it seriously.
This is a tough question for them all week. It has been. They were working it so hard behind the scenes in the national security team, the foreign policy advisors, deciding that it would be the military that takes the lead. Did they do the right thing?
Well, you know, I don't know the answer to that, but we know that they made a decision, that they made the right decision, which was to have initially General Petraeus come out and say this is a problem. Because you think about what General Petraeus is trying to do. He's got his own PR campaign that he's running, trying to hang some of the atrocities the Taliban is responsible for around their own necks. He doesn't need even a small incident to be made much larger in that part of the world because of what a small, you know, pastor is doing here in Florida. So it's a very real concern. The president alluded to that today. It does elevate it when the president speaks about it, when General Petraeus and others speak about it. But they made a decision that they can't simply allow it to move forward without being checked.
And the impact in the Muslim world,
yeah,
where this has already caused damage.
It has. I mean, look, they were between a rock and a hard place, the administration was, because you don't want to give publicity to this fringe, this guy who's on the fringe of the fringe, frankly, with a very checkered past, who's come up with this stunt. At the same time, the president mentioned the internet, and I'm sure that Petraeus and Gates and Hillary Clinton and the president were imagining the impact of a YouTube clip of Qurans aflame in the United States, how quickly that would spread, how instantaneously that would spread around the world, and what impact it would have not only in the war theaters, but on public opinion, in other countries where we don't have a problem. And so I guess they felt they had to do something, and I think they were probably right.
Just imagine the frustration after Cairo speech, the Istanbul speech, the initiatives now this coming week with Hillary Clinton going and trying to restart the peace talks, the frustration that they have to see this ridiculous episode and also blowing up their relationship with the Muslim world.
But let's also note that the president went out of his way to praise President Bush today. So the thing I most admired about him, which is not a preamble I've ever heard from this president, was how he went into the mosque.
What were the other 10 things you admired about him?
Yeah, I don't think there's that many other. But he makes the point that look, the way that President Bush talked about this not being a war on Islam was something that he thinks was important. He's trying to do that now. I mean, what I thought was interesting about today is the de-emphasis of the global scale of the terrorist threat and the primary emphasis on the need for tolerance and to understand how Muslims in this country are standing shoulder to shoulder with us, and we can't move in a direction where we have a wave of anti-Muslim sentiment if we're going to prevail overall.
We'll have to leave it there, but that is a good note on the eve of this somber commemoration. Thank you, Eugene, always, and David Gregory. And, of course, this Sunday on Meet the Press, David will be talking to White House senior advisor David Axelrod and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. So check your local listings.